Skyler Nice climbed out of her bedroom window just after midnight. She thought she was meeting her best friends for a harmless hangout. Hours later, she was buried under leaves in the woods. The plan had started long before that night, by two girls she trusted most. One of them was Sheila Ray Eddy. Sheila Ray Eddy was born in 1995 in Blacksville, West Virginia. Her parents, Tara Clendenin and Greg Eddy, split in 2000 after Greg suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car crash. When Sheila was 8, she met Skyler Nice at a local youth program. They bonded fast and stayed close. After her mother remarried in 2010, Sheila's family moved to Morgantown. Both girls enrolled at University High School. Sheila came from a working-class home. Her mother worked in an office. Her father stocked shelves at Walmart, but the friendship never wavered. Weekends, school days, they were always together. Shortly after midnight on July 6, 2012, 16-year-old Skyler left her bedroom window in Star City. She wanted to join Sheila and another friend, Rachel Shoaff, for what she thought was a casual hangout. In reality, Sheila and Rachel had a plan to take her life. They drove to a wooded area near Brave, Pennsylvania. Hidden under their clothes and towels, they carried kitchen tools. At a signal of 1, 2, 3, they carried out an aggressive act. Skyler received more than 50 wounds. Rachel paused when she was hurt, but Sheila kept going until Skyler stopped moving. Afterward, they covered Skyler's body with branches, dirt, and leaves. They cleaned themselves in the car. They even asked other students to help spread missing person flyers. When police first asked questions, both girls said they had dropped Skyler off safely. 6 months later, on January 3, 2013, Rachel broke down and confessed. She said, "We just didn't like her." In 2023, Rachel added that she and Sheila had been in a romantic relationship. They feared Skyler would find out. That fear, she said, led them to handle their tension with aggressiveness. Rachel Shoaff pleaded guilty to second-degree charges on May 1, 2013. She received a 30-year sentence with a chance at release after 10 years. She also led police to Skyler's remains. Sheila faced charges of taking someone against their will, taking a life, and planning together. On January 24, 2014, she pleaded guilty to first-degree taking of life. The judge gave her life with mercy, making her eligible for release after 15 years. At her hearing, Sheila spoke only one word: guilty. Her voice cracked. She offered no apology. Skyler's father said her silence showed no regret. Sheila is held at Lakin Correctional Center in West Virginia. Because she was under 18 at the time, she keeps some juvenile release rights under a 2012 Supreme Court ruling. Her first chance for release is in 2028. Rachel will become eligible around the same year. Eddy spoke just one word at her hearing. Now, why did a teenage girl walk out of a store at 2:48 a.m. with a machete? Eliza Wny lived with her mother in Chicago's Norwood Park neighborhood. She briefly attended Taft High School, then transferred to a therapeutic day school. Little is known about her family, only that her mother was her legal guardian. Just before dawn on May 30th, 2017, a 24-hour store's security camera in Skokie captured Eliza walking out. In one hand, a machete. In the other, a hunting tool. She didn't pay. The timestamp read 2:48 a.m. Roughly 30 minutes later, she called an Uber. It was her third ride that night. Seconds after she climbed into the car driven by 34-year-old Grant Nelson, she began to harm him. First, she swung the large blade. Then she struck him multiple times with the hunting tool. According to the prosecutor, this started only 2 minutes after the ride began. Nelson managed to pull into a condo complex at Touhy and Lincoln Avenues. He stumbled into the lobby, knocking on doors and shouting for help. "Help me! I'm going to die!" he cried. Officers followed a trail of red stains and found him with at least 6 wounds. He was rushed to St. Francis Hospital and passed away later that morning. Before he lost consciousness, he told first responders, "She came at me with a machete." Afterward, Eliza got back into the car and tried to drive away. She crashed into a median. Nearby officers found her hiding behind a building. When they told her to drop the red-stained blade and hunting object, she refused. They used a stun device to stop her. At the time of arrest, she wore a red-spattered Chicago Cubs t-shirt, which she later discarded during her escape attempt. No clear motive ever emerged. Prosecutors called the incident unprovoked and brutal. While in custody, Eliza continued to show dangerous and self-harming behaviors and spoke about harming others. In June 2017, Eliza, then still a teenager, was charged as an adult with causing someone to lose their life in the first degree. She was held without bail. On June 21st, she made her first court appearance in juvenile detention and did not speak. Neither side offered a reason for her actions. By August 2020, Eliza was 19. She agreed to a plea deal and pled guilty to causing someone to lose their life in the first degree, avoiding a full trial. The deal required full incarceration. On August 24, 2020, Judge Timothy Chambers sentenced her to 27 years in custody. She will remain confined until around age 44. The sentence also includes mandated mental health treatment while incarcerated and 3 years of supervision after her release. Up next is the Colorado girl whose hidden pregnancy turned tragic. Leila Chapeda was born in Texas in mid-2004. She traveled to Colorado with some relatives late in her pregnancy. No public records mention her parents or any brothers or sisters. Before this event, there is no record of wrongdoing or any mental health diagnosis. On June 10, 2022, she went into labor alone in a relative's home in Nunn, Weld County, Colorado. She was only 17 at the time. She had learned of the pregnancy just weeks before. A pregnancy test months earlier had been negative, so she was unprepared for the birth. Right after the baby was born, everyone noticed the newborn was quiet and not moving. Leila told investigators the baby did not seem to be breathing. She then saw several puncture injuries on the infant. A pair of scissors lay nearby. Leila said she used them only to cut the umbilical cord. She denied harming the baby on purpose. A medical examiner found that the baby had survived birth but later passed because of those sharp tool injuries. That finding led the local district attorney to charge Leila with 2 counts of intentionally ending a person's life. 1 count may relate to laws protecting unborn children. Although she was a minor when the act happened, she was tried in adult court because she had turned 18 by the time of her arrest. In August 2023, her lawyers entered a plea saying she was not responsible due to her mental state at the time. They asked for an evaluation of her ability to understand the court process. As of April 2025, the judge postponed the case until November, waiting for that mental health report. By July 2025, the trial has not yet taken place. Now, what about a 14-year-old who planned a fatal break-in all on her own? Born on July 20th, 1978, Ruth Ann Lvina grew up in Iowa with little stability. She moved through group homes and youth facilities. By her early teens, she already had 5 counts of physically harming others. In June 1993, Veal left her group facility and entered the quiet home of Catherine Polly Haynes, a 66-year-old retired librarian in Waterloo. What happened next was sudden and brutal. Veal struck her 23 times, leaving marks across her head and body. Then she rifled through drawers, took credit cards, grabbed the car keys, and drove off. That same day, she used the cards to shop at the mall. The court found proof she planned to steal. But what followed, so many blows, hinted at something deeper: rage, grief, or something no one could fully explain. Police found and arrested Veal in Cedar Rapids just days later. Although she was only 14, Iowa's system tried her as an adult. Prosecutors highlighted her past charges and the stolen car and cards. They argued her act was not just property theft, but also aimed at harming the victim. She was found guilty of first-degree taking a life. At the time, Iowa law demanded life, without any chance of release for juveniles in such cases. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled mandatory life terms for youth were unconstitutional. Iowa then changed its law. In 2013, Veal received a new sentencing hearing. Her term became life with the possibility of release. Veal remained at the Mitchellville Correctional Institution for Women. In 2019, she applied for release, but was turned down. In October 2020, the parole board approved her for work outside prison under strict rules. She began supervised work release in 2021. At her new hearing, the judge allowed family statements. Laura Haynes, the victim's daughter, spoke about her ongoing pain. She said her life is split into before and after her mother's death. When asked how she faced the person responsible, she said the courtroom terrified her. She tries not to imagine the possibility of Veal living freely again. As of 2020, parole officials often felt Veal had not shown she was ready. They still doubted her ability to live without supervision. It remains unclear if she will ever be fully released. Veal spoke in 2002 about her feelings in prison. She said that each day she must forgive herself for what she did. There is no record of any special meal requests since she never faced a death term. The original verdict came in 1993. She was found guilty of first-degree taking a life. Her first sentence was life with no chance of release. After 2013, it became life with parole possible. In 2020, she earned work release. In 2021, she moved into the community under strict supervision. The next case wasn't just about jealousy, it was about control and the twisted bond between a mother and daughter. Brittany Angelique Miller was born in 1993 in Florida. She grew up in a trailer park in Ensley, Escambia County. She lived there with her mother, Tina LaSonia Brown, and their neighbor, Heather Trini Lee. Their home life was unstable. Conflicts happened often. Brittany's relationship with Adriana Zimmerman had turned sour over arguments about Brittany's boyfriend. One day, Brittany saw Zimmerman with him. Brittany tried to hit Zimmerman. Zimmerman used a stun device on her instead. Brittany's mother struggled with addiction use and anger. On the day of the fatal incident, Tina Brown had spent a large sum on substances. She also traded her body for illegal substances. The house was full of chaos, neglect, and unsafe behavior. Brittany experienced trauma and emotional harm in her early years. Her defense later said those experiences shaped how she acted. On March 24, 2010, Brown invited 19-year-old Adriana Zimmerman over, saying they wanted to be friends again. Instead, Brittany and Heather Lee hid nearby. When Zimmerman stepped inside, Brown slammed the door. The three used a 200,000-volt taser on her, then they beat her with a crowbar. Next, they took her by force, dragging her into a car. They drove to a lonely, wooded spot. There, they hurt her again. Brown poured gasoline over the unconscious and screaming Zimmerman. She then set her body on fire while Brittany and Lee watched. Despite having burns over 90% of her body, Zimmerman managed to walk nearly a third of a mile. She reached a neighbor's house and called 911. She survived in the hospital for 16 days but finally lost her life on April 9, 2010, due to those severe burn injuries. At trial, prosecutors said the goal was revenge for Zimmerman's earlier stun device defense against Brittany. They argued Brown, Brittany, and Lee planned to punish her. All three were arrested and charged with first-degree homicide. In 2011, Heather Lee accepted a plea deal for second-degree homicide. She testified against Brown and Miller. She received a 25-year sentence. Brittany Miller was too young to face the harshest penalty. In May 2013, she pleaded guilty to first-degree homicide and unlawful taking of a person. She was given life with no chance of release. In 2017, Miller asked the court to undo her plea. She said she didn't fully understand the lifelong outcome. She also pointed to new rules on young offenders. The court refused. At her resentencing hearing, her lawyers spoke about her troubled childhood and her mother's strong control over her. Judge Gary Burgosh kept her life sentence, but said she could ask to be reviewed after 15 years. In April 2019, the Florida First District Court of Appeal agreed with that decision. Today, Brittany is held at Lowell Correctional Institution in Florida. She may ask for a sentence review in 2038, 15 years after her original sentence. Next is a California girl whose school shooting changed safety rules forever. Brenda Ann Spencer was born in 1962 in San Diego, California. Her parents were Dorothy Nadine Hobel and Wallace Edward Spencer. She was the youngest of 3 children. Her parents married in 1954 but split up by January 1972. Dorothy believed Wallace was unfaithful and filed for divorce. The court gave full custody to Wallace. Brenda went to live with her father. Their home was cluttered with empty bottles. They sometimes slept on a single mattress in the living room. Brenda later said her father treated her badly and that her mother did not check on her. Her parents denied neglect. She grew up with very little money and a lot of chaos. By her early teens, she showed serious signs of distress. She stopped going to school often and was sent to a program for truancy. She said she felt so low that she thought about ending her own life. She also took part in acts like breaking into houses and shooting out school windows with a BB gun. In December 1978, mental health experts urged her father to get her help. He refused. Instead, he gave her a Ruger .22 rifle and some ammunition for Christmas. A few weeks later, she would use that same rifle in a shocking way. On January 29, 1979, 16-year-old Brenda skipped school again. She climbed up to a front room window in her house. From there, she fired her .22 semi-automatic rifle at Grover Cleveland Elementary School across the street. Children were lining up outside for classes. Over about 20 minutes, she pulled the trigger roughly 30 times. 2 school staff members died. Principal Burton Ragg and custodian Mike Suchar did not survive their injuries. 9 others were hurt, including 8 children and a police officer. Neighbors called the police. Officers surrounded Brenda's home. After a 6-hour wait, she gave herself up. Later that day, a reporter reached her by phone. She said, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." In the days before, she had told friends she wanted to do something big to appear on television. Brenda was treated as an adult in court. She admitted to 2 counts of first-degree homicide and 1 count of using a deadly weapon. The judge and jury heard about her troubled past, her mental state, and what drove her to act. They also learned about her depression, addiction, possible head injury, and early harm she suffered at home. Her sentence was life in prison with the chance of parole after 25 years. She has served her time at the California Institution for Women in Chino. In prison, Brenda took part in many programs. She worked on anger management and therapy for her depression and anxiety. She helped care for cats, worked in a maintenance warehouse, earned a forklift certificate, and joined peer education workshops. At parole hearings, she spoke about living with schizoaffective disorder, using substances since middle school, past head injuries, and the harm she said she suffered from her father starting at age 7. At her 2009 parole hearing, she said her plan was not to harm others but to draw police attention so she could end her own life. She explained that substances had numbed her feelings that day. She has stayed on medication and understands her condition is lifelong. Her most recent request for parole was denied. She must wait until 2028 before applying again. The next teenager planned it, wrote it down, then acted. But before we move on to the next case, consider subscribing for more cases like this. Pearl Moen was a high school junior from Austin, Texas. She was born around 1998, though the exact date isn't public. Her home life was tense. She and her mother often clashed. Before 2015, Pearl had no record of serious wrongdoing. She did have one domestic incident with her mother and finished counseling just 2 weeks before what happened next. In November 2015, when she was 17, Pearl planned an aggressive act. Just before dawn, on November 14th, she waited behind some bushes outside an apartment building in Hyde Park. A 24-year-old nurse was sitting on a blanket after a date. The nurse's companion had gone inside, and she was waiting alone. As the sky lightened, Pearl came out and used a sharp weapon on her. She struck the young woman 21 times. The victim suffered a collapsed lung, heavily injured, nerve and tendon damage, and cut muscles. She survived because doctors operated right away, and she spent months in therapy. Pearl's diary later made clear what drove her. She wrote that the act was absolutely fantastic. She said taking a life gave her a rush, unlike any other fight or flight mode. She added, "I'm so proud of myself. I struck her like 20 times, maybe more. I wasn't counting. I'm a violent psychopath. I have a deep hatred toward people right now." Those pages became key evidence. Police found them after Pearl got into a fight with her mother on February 14, 2016. Her mother and boyfriend handed over the diary and some sketches. Pearl was arrested on February 28, 2016. She was held in Travis County Jail on a $1 million bond. She faced a charge for trying to take a life, which is a second-degree felony in Texas. In January 2017, she made a plea deal. She pled guilty to that charge and accepted a set sentence. At her sentencing, the judge gave her 15 years behind bars. That was under the terms of her deal. She could have faced up to 20 years. The victim spoke afterward. She said she was relieved Pearl had hurt her instead of someone more vulnerable, like a small child or an elderly person. She said, "I'm happy she's in prison and she can't do this to anyone else." Pearl Moen is now serving her 15-year sentence in a Texas state prison. Under Texas rules, she can ask for parole after she serves part of her term. Her exact location and programs aren't public, but she is likely housed with other young people. Rebecca Lynn Walker was a teenager from Elkview, West Virginia. She was born around 2003 or 2004, though the exact date isn't public. She was in high school and had no record of wrongdoing. Her teachers called her a good student. Her friends said she was quiet and kept to herself. She carried a lot of sadness. In 2016, major flooding hit parts of West Virginia. Rebecca's mother died in that event. Rebecca later said losing her mother left a hole in her life. After that, she spent more time at her grandmother's home. In spring 2020, Rebecca started dating a boy the court identified only as GS. He was 16 and under strict rules at home. They spoke in secret video calls and text messages. They exchanged over 15,000 messages in a few months. In early December 2020, GS told Rebecca he felt trapped at home. He said he was angry and wanted to end things at his house so that they could run away together. On December 9th, his grandmother was out of town. GS went into his family home on Cemetery Hill Drive in Elkview. He held a gun and a sharp tool while on a live video call with Rebecca. She told him, "Hurry up and do it." 4 people in that house passed away. Those were his mother, his stepfather, and his 2 younger brothers. A relative found them on December 13th, 2020. The scene was tragic and covered in red stains. At her trial, Rebecca admitted she urged him on. She said she thought this would let them be together without his family stopping them. She also said she wanted to protect him. Prosecutors said her reasons were selfish. They said she helped him hide afterward and kept evidence from the police. Some asked if Rebecca could have called someone to stop it. The victim's grandfather said one phone call might have prevented everything. That question hung over the whole trial. Rebecca was first charged in juvenile court for a serious offense. In July 2021, she made a deal. She pleaded guilty to helping him after the event. In court, she asked to be treated as an adult. She accepted a 10-year sentence made up of 4 back-to-back terms of 2.5 years her age. At her sentencing on September 23, 2021, Judge Kenneth Ballard said he had no words to comfort the families. Rebecca gave a written statement. The judge read it silently. By pleading guilty, Rebecca admitted she hid his red-stained clothes and sheltered him at her grandmother's house in Clendenin. She was sent to an adult facility after turning 18. Records show she moved from Lakin Correctional Center to South Central Regional Jail, following state policy for teens in adult custody. Rebecca told the court that GS had mistreatment issues at home. Her lawyers later said their relationship was a perfect storm of grief and dependence. Prosecutors disagreed. They called her actions a betrayal that cost 4 lives. She also admitted lying during police interviews. She said she told him to hurry on the video call. She claimed she planned to get him help before everything happened. Some online debated whether 10 years was enough. One person wrote that Rebecca showed no regret and that she set off a tragic chain of events. In the end, Rebecca never pulled the trigger herself, but she didn't stop him. That choice carries a heavy weight. Up next is A House of Horror and a girl with no remorse. Winona Fletcher was born around 1971 in Anchorage, Alaska. Her exact birthday is not public. She grew up in a home marked by chaos. Adults close to her hurt her physically, emotionally, and intimately. By age 13, she ran away to escape this. She then met Cordell Boyd, who was 19 at the time. He introduced her to illegal substances and to work where she was exploited. Her mother later said Boyd had an intimate relationship with Fletcher when she was just 13. To survive, Fletcher provided companionship for money. On the night of April 22, 1985, Fletcher and Boyd entered the home of Tom and Ann Faccio and Ann's sister, Amelia Elliott. This happened in the Russian Jack neighborhood of East Anchorage. Their original aim was theft. Boyd demanded cash and Tom handed over about $700, but the situation escalated. Fletcher took the life of Ann Faccio, age 70, and Amelia Elliott, age 76. Boyd either took the life of or helped take the life of Tom Faccio, age 69. Witnesses said the act seemed driven by a thrill. They reported Fletcher laughed as red splashed on the wall. People in Anchorage asked why these 3 older adults lost their lives that night. The official reason was theft. Yet Boyd's later comments and Fletcher's laughter hinted at something darker, an urge for power or destruction. This harsh behavior paired with Fletcher's calm manner shook the local community. Fletcher was only 14 when this happened. Despite her age, a judge decided she would not change by age 20. Her case was moved from juvenile court to adult court. This meant she faced adult charges. At 15, Fletcher pleaded no contest to 2 counts of first-degree homicide and 1 count of second-degree homicide. In trial testimony, Boyd, who later withdrew his story, said Fletcher showed little reluctance and that she suggested the shootings. Afterward, he admitted his testimony was false. Fletcher's lawyers argued Boyd had ordered her to act. The court, however, went with the account given at trial. On December 17, 1986, Fletcher received the longest sentence allowed, 3 back-to-back terms of 99 years each. Later, this was cut to 3 45-year terms for a total of 135 years. She can seek release after turning 60. At sentencing, the prosecutor said, "I cannot explain how someone by the age of 14 becomes as evil as Winona Fletcher was, but that's just the way she is." The judge added, "I don't know what is wrong today." Fletcher spent decades behind bars. In 2005, she asked for a new review of her case. She cited Boyd's retraction and modern studies on teen brain development. These showed young teens often cannot fully understand the impact of their actions or control impulses. Her request was denied at first. In May 2023, the Alaska Court of Appeals said her 135-year sentence must be looked at again, given today's science on adolescent growth. By August 2024, the court confirmed these rules apply to cases from the past. That gave Fletcher and others a chance to ask for a shorter term. Now in her mid-50s, Fletcher remains eligible to seek release in 2031 when she turns 60. However, the new sentencing review could change that date. The next victim was a Vietnam vet. She was his daughter, and she had a plan. Sally E. Gilmer was born around January 2007. She grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. Her home life was full of tension. Her father, Jesse Gilmer Jr., was a 70-year-old Vietnam War veteran. He had lost one leg and broken the other in an accident. He used a wheelchair to get around. Her mother, Sherry Gilmer, dealt with money problems, fights with her husband, addiction, and rumors of affairs. As a child, Sally was close to her father. By her teen years, they barely spoke without arguing. A psychologist later called the house an intimidating place. People shouted at each other. Objects were thrown. Emotions ran high. On October 3, 2022, 15-year-old Sally and her 16-year-old boyfriend, Isaac Honigschmidt, planned something dark. At first, they treated it like a joke. Soon, it became a serious plan. They talked about it for a week.
On the morning of the day they chose, they turned their phones to airplane mode. They wanted to appear at school but stay off the grid. Isaac drove Sally to the apartment where she lived with her parents. He waited in the car. Sally went inside with a sharp weapon. She used it to wound her father at least 6 times. One cut went through a rib and into an artery. Another hit his head. Afterwards, Sally got back in Isaac's car. They drove to school. They switched their phones back on. Later, they returned home. Sally acted shocked. She said she had just found her father lying on the couch. She called 911. She said she arrived from school to find him that way. When officers came, they saw Jesse unresponsive. A medical examiner found that he had died from multiple wounds and from a heavy blow. Police arrested both Sally and Isaac right away. They were charged with causing a death with a weapon. Investigators found clear signs they had planned every step. The phones had been off. The wounds were precise. Isaac had thrown the weapon away at a store. Police found it there. Why did they do it? Sally's home life was hurting her. She heard yelling all the time. She felt ignored. Money was tight. She had health worries from surviving childhood leukemia. She thought ending her father's life would stop all the fighting. She also saw a note about a $10,000 insurance payout. She told Isaac she would share it if her mother agreed. Sally asked to have her case moved from juvenile court to adult court. The hearing took place on January 22, 2024. Experts said she had severe depression, mood swings, and some psychotic episodes from past stress. They said she was unlikely to harm others again if she got help. Sally's mother described the daily arguments, the substance use issues, and the controlling behavior. Isaac's influence was noted too. He had brought sharp objects into the picture and grown very close to Sally. Still, the judge kept the case in adult court. The judge cited the planning involved, the effort to hide what they did, and concerns for public safety. On November 8, 2024, Sally pleaded guilty to a second-degree charge for causing a death. In Nebraska, that charge carries 20 years to life behind bars. The more serious first-degree count and one weapon count were dropped in exchange for her plea. On January 30, 2025, the judge sentenced 18-year-old Sally to 40 to 60 years in prison. Isaac later pleaded no contest to helping hide evidence. His sentencing was set for February, and he faced anywhere from 2 to 100 years. Up next is a 12-year-old girl. A hidden gun. A confession streamed live. Ash Cooper was born in 2007. She grew up in Bensalem Township, Pennsylvania. Ash was assigned male at birth and first known as Joshua Cooper. Later, she came to identify as a transgender woman. Friends and family recall emotional struggles and tense behavior before the tragic event. On November 25, 2022, when Ash was 16, she invited 12-year-old Morgan Connors to her father's trailer at the Top of the Ridge Trailer Park. They watched Netflix together. At some point, Ash went to her father's gun safe. Its battery lock had been disabled. She opened it and removed a firearm. Morgan asked where the bathroom was and walked away. Somewhere inside the trailer, Morgan suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her neck and upper chest. She did not survive. A chilling question arose. Why would Ash harm a friend? Ash never offered a clear motive. Court papers show she called Morgan a friend and hinted at a close relationship, but no definite explanation ever emerged. Right after the shooting, Ash did something shocking. During an Instagram live video chat, she told another teen, "I just harmed someone," and showed Morgan's legs and feet covered in red stains. She asked that friend to help clean up and dispose of the body. That friend was horrified and told her mother, who then alerted the police. Police arrived at about 4:11 p.m. They saw a juvenile running from the scene. Inside the trailer, officers found Morgan in the bathroom. Towels soaked in red and bleach were nearby, evidence of an attempted cleanup. When officers questioned Ash, she called it an accident. She sounded frightened and said, "I'm going to spend my life behind bars." Ash was charged with a serious wrongdoing, possession of an instrument used to cause harm, and tampering with evidence. In March 2024, at age 18, she pleaded guilty. At sentencing, Morgan's grandfather, Alan Gold, spoke about his granddaughter. He remembered her as sweet and beautiful. He shared the family's grief, saying, "A parent should never have to bury a child." Judge Jeffrey L. Finley accepted the plea deal. He noted Ash's troubled past and the tragedy's weight. He also said she would not spend the rest of her life in prison and urged her to take this chance to rehabilitate. Under the agreement, Ash received 15 to 40 years in prison. After release, she will serve 7 years of probation. She must also undergo psychological and psychiatric evaluations and follow all probation rules. The next teenager was a top student, had a loving home. So what made her snap in under 4 minutes? Sydney was the only daughter of Stephen and Brenda Powell. They lived in Akron. She did well in high school and graduated with honors. Her English teacher called her a standout, bubbly kid. She joined a university sorority after high school. She earned a scholarship to the University of Mount Union. Brenda Powell spent nearly 30 years helping children with serious illnesses at Akron Children's Hospital. Stephen and Brenda gave Sydney a stable home. Sydney and her mother were very close. Sydney often called her mother her best friend. In late 2019 and early 2020, Sydney's grades dropped sharply. She told her parents she was still enrolled, but she was not. The university suspended her. She was evicted from her dorm. To avoid her parents, she spent nights in hotels. On February 25th, Brenda texted to check on her grades. Sydney replied, "My grades are good." In reality, they were failing. On March 3rd, 2020, school officials called Brenda about the suspension. A heated argument began at home. Within minutes, Sydney grabbed a cast iron skillet and hit her mother. Then she used a sharp tool more than 23 times, mostly in the neck. In total, Brenda suffered 24 wounds. From the first strike to the last, less than 4 minutes passed. When police and paramedics arrived, Sydney was in distress. She asked over and over, "Is she going to be okay?" She said she grabbed the sharp tool to help. Her father, Stephen, came into the room seconds later. Sydney had minor wounds and was taken to the hospital. Brenda passed away soon after at Akron General Hospital. Before this, Sydney had no record of aggressive behavior or legal issues. Friends and family said she was bright and driven. No one saw warning signs serious enough to involve mental health professionals. Sydney faced charges for ending her mother's life, inflicting severe injury, and interfering with evidence. She entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Expert witnesses said she had schizoaffective disorder and was in a psychotic state. They said she could not understand what she was doing. Prosecutors argued her actions showed planning. They pointed to how she moved items at the scene and lied to officers. A rebuttal expert said she was not psychotic and acted on purpose. She told jurors that Sydney staged the scene to avoid responsibility. After 9 hours and 23 minutes of jury deliberation, Sydney was found guilty in September 2023 on all counts. Judge Kelly McLaughlin gave her an indefinite term of 15 years to life. She will only be considered for release after serving the minimum term. Her defense team appealed, saying the trial court wrongly limited their evidence. In December 2024, the 9th District Court of Appeals agreed and ordered a new trial. Prosecutors then asked the Ohio Supreme Court to step in. They argued that allowing extra rebuttal evidence could upend trial rules across the state. That appeal is still pending. Now, what makes a teenager stay at the scene begging for prison? Tamara Laws was born in 2001. She grew up in San Antonio, Texas. Her grandmother, Doris Ruth Novella, raised her. Her mother struggled with addiction. Her father was in prison because his actions led to a child's passing. Tamara faced deep pain early in life. When she was very young, her grandfather harmed her in an intimate way. Around 2014 or 2015, she went through a miscarriage or stillbirth. Those events stayed with her for years. Looking for relief, Tamara began using illegal substances. She also worked as an escort alongside her grandmother to earn money. The substances made her mental health worse. She started having psychotic episodes with hallucinations, extreme suspicion, and thoughts of harming herself. On February 22, 2020, she suffered a full psychotic break. She became convinced her grandmother was plotting against her. She believed her grandmother practiced witchcraft and wanted to hurt her. Voices, some she thought were in her own mind, others she believed came through her father on the phone, told her she had to end her grandmother's life or she would face the same fate. She feared being dismembered and sent away in a box. She later said, "I thought the energy was on me, so I was thinking to get it off. I had to beat it out." She also testified that the voices demanded she act or be the victim. In that state of confusion and fear, she used force around her grandmother's throat. She then struck her with a hammer. Her grandmother's face was left unrecognizable. Afterward, Tamara tried to clean the scene with a household cleaner. She then confessed to her brother, Octavian Jones, saying she was sorry and that she'd done something terrible. She stayed at the scene. Fleeing made no sense in her confused state. When officers arrived, she asked them to give her the harshest penalty. She said, "My dad told me that they were going to come and harm me." Tamara chose a bench trial instead of a jury. Judge Catherine Torres Stahl oversaw the case. Her defense described her as a deeply troubled young woman, pushed beyond her limits by trauma and psychosis. Psychiatrists testified about her history of mental illness, her early mistreatment, her miscarriage, her addiction, and her hallucinations. Prosecutors argued that her substance use caused only temporary psychosis. They said she still knew her actions were wrong. They noted jail mental health staff saw no ongoing psychosis and that she tried to hide evidence. In February 2025, the judge found her responsible for the harm to her grandmother. On April 28, 2025, the judge sentenced Tamara to 20 years in a Texas correctional facility. Prosecutors had sought 50 years, but the judge acknowledged Tamara's tragic past while saying her grandmother deserved justice. From the stand, Tamara asked for mercy. "I'm crying out for you to help me. I'm asking for a second chance. and I'll do everything I can to learn from my mistakes. I'll learn how to manage my mental health and stay away from substance." She spoke of that night again. "It was my psychosis and my father that led to what happened. In my mind, I thought I would be harmed if I didn't protect myself. She must serve at least 10 years before she can ask for parole. Her family hopes she will get the mental health care she needs. Experts warn that treatment in correctional facilities can be inadequate and might make her condition worse. Since she is appealing, her sentence is not yet final."